Hello, I'm Irishman Conor McReynolds, and I was born in Dublin but reared on the north coast of Ireland, near to the Giant's Causeway. The Giant's Causeway is a rock formation comprising of around 40,000 interlocking basalt columns. Scientists posit that the causeway was formed by an ancient underwater volcanic eruption, but this rather fantastical notion has long been disputed by the Irish people, who know that the causeway was in fact formed by Irish giant Fionn MacCumhaill during his famous battle with infamous Scottish giant and all-round knobhead Ben Donner. I loved stories about Fionn MacCumhaill growing up. His battle with Ben Donner, the knobhead, is legendary, but for me, the greatest story of Finn is how he came to possess his magic thumb. When Finn was but a boy, he set out to make a life for himself. Finn met a wise old man, Finnegas. Finnegas was a stargazer and a poet, widely considered to be Ireland's first hippie. Finnegas was getting on in years and needed a bit of help about the place, so he hired young Finn to do odds and ends. Despite Finnegas being a very wise old fella, he'd been trying for years to catch the salmon of knowledge. How does a salmon get such a moniker? Simple. This salmon was once a perfectly ordinary salmon, just like you or me, until it happened to eat 9 nuts that fell from hazel trees surrounding the well of wisdom. In eating these nuts, the salmon reportedly gained all of the world's knowledge. That sounds like a gift, but think about what it must have actually been like for a really smart fish who can't communicate to anyone just how smart he is. It must have been torture. I'm not quite sure how Finnegas figured it out, but he was a smart cookie in his own right, and he deduced that if he caught the salmon of knowledge and ate it, that he would gain all of the salmon's knowledge, thus inheriting the title of world's smartest salmon for himself. And sure enough, after 7 long years of fishing, one day, Finnegas successfully caught and murdered the fish. Finnegas felt tired after reeling in the salmon of knowledge, and he asked young Fionn MacCumhaill to cook the fish over a fire and bring it to him. This was the first recorded instance in Irish history of a hippie not opting for sushi when they had the chance. Now, Finnegas only had one instruction for Finn: don't eat any of my fucking fish. So, young Finn lit a fire and cooked the salmon over the flame. It was crisping up nicely, but Finn noticed that there was a little bubble forming under the skin, and for reasons known only to Finn, he decided to get rid of that bubble. Now I know what you're thinking. He probably got a stick and poked the bubble or some other inanimate object, because nobody in their right mind would reach over to a bubbling hot salmon over a roaring fire with their bare hands and burst it, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Young Finn reached over with his thumb and popped the bubble. You might be surprised to learn that this was incredibly fucking painful for the young giant, and he immediately put his thumb in his mouth to stop the burning. Finn waited for the fish to be cooked, then brought it to Finnegas, who was very excited to consume not just a tasty bit of fresh fish, but also all of the knowledge in the world. He ate and he ate, but he didn't notice anything different. He turned to the young giant and asked, "You didn't eat any of the fish, did you?" Young Finn assured him that of course he wouldn't have done such a thing. So you didn't even touch it, right?" asked Finnegas. Finn looked a bit awkward at this point, and replied that he might have burst a bubble on the skin with his thumb. Finnegas sighed. "Tell me you didn't put your thumb in your mouth." Finn became visibly awkward here, looking much like my dog looked that time we came in to find an entire roast chicken on the kitchen floor. Finnegas cursed under his breath. He got what was happening. That big bumbling idiot had somehow managed to consume all of the knowledge from the salmon, leaving only a huge lump of oily fish, rich in protein and omega-3. Thus, Fionn MacCumhaill became the wisest salmon on the planet. Anytime Finn needed to access all of the world's knowledge, he'd simply pop his thumb in his mouth and the answer to whatever problem he faced came to him. Obviously, if you or I did this, we'd look a bit childish and creepy, but such was his towering intellect, he could actually pull it off and still come away looking worldly and wise. Kind of like if Stephen Fry could only be smart if he picked his nose or something. What would come out of his mouth would still be so impressive that you'd forget that he had an enormous booger hanging off the end of his finger. So, yeah, that is the story of Finn McCool and the Salmon of Knowledge.